Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Adam. First, I want to thank the drum shop, Drums Etc., and Adam for having me out. It's a little bit of background about myself and what I do and where I came from, what I do. I'm a product of this area. I went to Cocalico High School. I got kicked out of middle school band in 7th grade. There were 17 drummers. That's way too many for a middle school band. So we had auditions, and I got kicked out because I never practiced, never took it seriously. Started taking private lessons in 8th grade. Realized I was better at playing drums than third bass. So I made that decision. I think I was a sophomore year in high school. Let's pursue this music thing a little bit, see how it goes. Took private lessons, did all the things I would normally do in a high school band. How many went through like a high school program, like your high school band program, right? Because I know Connor's here, because Connor was one of my former students a long time ago, way before you could grow facial hair.
Yeah.
Or drink a Corona. This is really weird.
Just a couple of years.
Just a couple of years, right? But, you know, did all the things I would do in high school, and then decided I wanted to have a career in music. I wanted to be a music teacher. Actually, I wanted to play, but my father was an educator, so he made sure that I got the education degree, which I actually never ended up getting. So I went to school in music ed, realized after my first experience in a 3rd grade classroom that this is something I never, ever, ever, ever want to do, okay? So I changed my major to music performance, mainly trained in classical percussion, but what got me into playing music was drums. I mean, I played drums in 4th grade. The idea of total percussion, which we see now a lot in schools, wasn't a thing. So it was. I don't even think we barely had bell players when I was in school. So played drums, went to college, spent years behind a marimba, timpani, vibraphone, went through school, got a degree in music performance, moved to Washington, D.C. As a performer, played there for about 5 years. Also did some sales jobs because I needed some health insurance and so forth. And then ended up back in Lancaster about the year 2000, back where I came from, and started teaching privately at a couple private schools. Started playing, networking, that word that Gabe used, super important. When Gabe was talking about auditions, you talk about like the real audition versus
Informal. Whoa. Unlike a poll probably.
I heard there we go.
We're back.
Yeah, that's quick, and we're back. The formal versus informal. I would say the majority of my jobs have been through an informal process, whether it be in a performance situation or non-performance situation. But currently, I live in Lancaster. I am the high school band director and arranger at Lancaster Catholic High School. Conduct the percussion ensemble, which we performed at the Pennsylvania Music Educators Association conference in 2018. Who've done commission works. I'm also adjunct percussion instructor at Nonnenmocher University, where I teach drum sets and also classical percussion. So my background is very similar to Gabe's. Did you give a background thing because I was late? Okay, cool. So we have a very similar. He went to Westchester, I went to IUP. Yeah, okay.
I was listening.
Yeah.
I just want to do the test. It's okay.
Here's the test.
Yes, you do.
So Gabe and I have a very similar background, and I know a lot of the things that I was going to talk about he's already spoken about. I please interject. Conversation and dialogue is awesome. I am a product of this drum shop, right? I can remember, this is the 4th Drums Etc. There have been 4, right?
4th, yeah.
Yeah, I've been in all 4. How many of you have been in all 4? Pfeiffer? Yeah, come on, you've been there. Yeah, I was going to say. Jamie? Which one were you in? On Plum Street? Yeah, Plum Street, yeah. So I remember going to the Plum Street store with my grandma, taking a cab from my grandma's house to the Plum Street store from the 7th Ward, open up the front door of the drum shop. I'm in 6th grade, and nothing but cigarette smoke just bellows out. This is probably 83, 84 maybe, and it's just like, at first I thought they were testing the smoke machines. I think that's how Rick maintained the rent, was the smoke machine rental for a while in the 80s. So having these things is really cool. It's really like I've seen Jamie here today. I haven't seen Jamie in years, and I was a fly on the wall when you come in, and I would just hear stuff that Jamie's talking about, his gigs. I'm like, okay, just check that, save that for later, So having these kind of things is great. I've been in the parking lot with John Pfeiffer till 2 o'clock in the morning, and the drum shop closed at noon, right? Talking, right? So these kind of things. I mean, our community of drummers is like anyone else, in the fact that generally we're not jerks, and that's one of the key things I want to talk about. It's don't be a jerk, right? If you want to have a career in music, you can be great and be a jerk and still do well. But being a jerk is going to get you more. I don't want to say that's going to get around real quick, and people don't want to work with you. Years ago, when I first started teaching at Lancaster Catholic, I brought in the trumpet professor from Kutztown University. He was a big jazz guy, and he studied at, I forget what bands he played with, but he studied at Indiana University out in Bloomington. And they did a research project in Indiana between the music department and the science department about what emotion makes you play the best, right? Does anybody have any idea, what physical emotion do you have will make you play the best? Anybody have any ideas? Happiness. Okay. Because the key is to be tension-free, right? When you have no tension, it's the way to be. What do you think? What emotion?
Happiness and sadness, because when I'm sad, when I play the saxophone, I'm
Okay, that can get some good stuff from you too. Yeah, it's called the blues. Yep.
I play really good.
Yeah, cool. But actually, the research, it was close to that. It was about love, right? And when he said that, and then he followed up with just don't be a jerk, because if you're a jerk and the people playing next to you are going to hate you, then the band's not going to be as good, right? So, and I thought about that for a hot minute, and I was like, man, remember that gig where that was killer? Yeah, I loved everyone in that band. They were all my buds, right? That show was great. That show was great. That show was great. Think about the shows that were horrible. When I couldn't stand the bass player, when he was just where I couldn't stand the guitar player, or the lead singer was just, a lot of you in the room have gone through this scenario. So, don't be a jerk. Anyway, I'm getting way off track, which is I always.
No, you're not.
No?
No, you're not.
Good.
The answer, that's a very good point. Because I've made mistakes in both ends.
Oh yeah, me too. Oh, me
It's
too.
not so much that. It has to do the difference between positive energy and negative.
Oh, 100%.
That's the thing about
100%. And that was one of the biggest things I had to change when I started playing, was trying to get work. Is no one's going to hire you because you're a jerk. Be a good guy. Gabe's one of the biggest positive guys I know. I love when Gabe comes around. It's true, Gabe. You're a good guy. I like you. Okay, so kind of at least I'm happy. So kind of what my thing was my session was, what was it? You can make it, you can do it. It is possible to have a career in music or a career in the arts. And I think about, we hear the term gig economy so much right now. Well, I know for us in the room that have been playing, that's kind of been our lives, until you get that gig that really gives that money, which still, let me know if you find it, okay? So some of the things that we don't think about to do, and I use myself as the example because this is what I know. I told you a little bit of my background, but I also worked in a music store. I did retail. I worked at Drums Etc. for a couple of years in retail, taught lessons, and lived in the apartment above it until kind of had to figure out what the next step was going to be, okay? I worked as a road rep for another music company working with schools, all right? And every little thing that you can do within the industry is going to help you. And I think that key word, again, you said it was relationships or networking. Those people will call you before they post a job, right? Before it's out there, hey, do you want this? Because we won't offer it to anyone else if you want it, because we know you, okay? But if you look at the word career, career is defined as a profession for which one trains and which is undertaken as a permanent calling, okay? Does it pay the mortgage, right? I get this all the time, mainly now from parents of high school kids who are deciding whether they want to be, musicians, and their parents are concerned because they're like, how are you going to be, how are you going to sustain your career? How are you going to have a family? How are you going to have a house? They're worried about like the very things that any, I think, parent would be worried about. But what most parents don't realize is like the industry is huge. It's huge, and there's jobs for everyone. Like we got into this, I got into this, most of us get into this because like I wanted to be in Zeppelin. Like even though Bonham was already dead, maybe they were going to like come back together, and I wanted to be on the plane, right? I wanted to have a mud shark incident sometime in my life. That's what kind of got me into, I was excited, I wanted to be a rock and roll guy. But through rock and roll guy, I got into classical music because of prog rock, because of bands like ELP and whatever. And that opened a whole new world of music for me, being classical music, right? So I'd taken that route. So putting all these things together, yes, you can do it. It is possible. But you have to wear a lot of different hats. And we talk about just being a drum set player. I mean, it's a very common token tool that everyone says, you have to have a big toolbox, right? How many of you have heard that before? You got to have this wrench for this groove, or this groove, or this groove, this groove, That's great. You can learn all the patterns and grooves in the world. You got to have that, okay? The hard part is when to use them, right? Is when to use that wrench, That's the hard part. But having this gig economy, you can do it. Some of the things we don't think about that can help, that you can do careers in, or supplement your performing career if that's what you want to do, or supplement any other part of your career. Because I think it's not just, my title is different at different places, right? I wear different hats, right? But when it comes down to the end of the day, I'm a musician, right? I teach music, I play music, I write music, I compose music, I arrange music, and so forth. But some of the things to think about. I think about, again, what I've done. Drum lines. Who's done high school drum line? Right? High school drum line, if you do it, number one, it's great. You're going to get hands, right? You're going to get hands, technique. You're going to get some chops. It's the way to go. But how many of you actually taught high school drum lines afterwards, after you got out of high school? You did, Gabe. Ed. Connor, did you teach it all in Hempfield when you're done? Okay. Because that can be one of the most, the best resources you have. Even if you didn't do high school marching band, you can reach out to your local school. Because I don't know about you, but when I graduated college in the mid-90s, I didn't own 4 timpani, I didn't own a marimba, I didn't own a vibraphone. Basically, I didn't have $50,000 worth of gear at my disposal to go gig, right? I got the piece of paper that says I can play. I played some gigs using university equipment. I maybe have a tambourine and a triangle and some cymbals and a drum set. But now I got to go play this gig where I need to play a xylophone. Well, the gig pays $150. Xylophone's what? Rosewood, $4.5, $3,000, right? Do the math. Yeah, we're not going to take that gig, right? But if you're teaching at a school, guarantee they're probably going to have a xylophone or 2 or 3, or marimba or 2 or 3, and timpani and so forth. So that has been, and since 1987, I've been involved with a high school marching band for every year except for one. I think it was 99. I think that was it, because that's when my band was going to make it. And then we didn't. So drum lines, teaching, okay? And that's all different levels of teaching. Here, the drum, private lessons, right? At one point, I had 100 private lessons a week that I was teaching in the drum shop, and you got to be creative. It's not just school kids, it's homeschool kids, it's adults. I had an adult student one year that just wanted to learn how to play Rock and Roll by Led Zeppelin, right? And I was like, I can show you that, but we kind of have to go like this first. Had it for a couple months, but there's people out there that want to play, So, that is a viable, because most gigs are in the evenings, right? So you got to find something to fill out your daytime stuff sometimes. So private lessons, also within the community groups. And this is not just drumming lessons, but it could be hand drumming groups. Hand drumming groups.
There you go.
Sorry.
No, I'm sorry, I'm around the corner here. That's okay.
I sing like 3 backups a year, and I usually do it off mic
That's a little tough.
because I'm usually flat. Anyway, community groups. In Lancaster, there's a great thing, Music for Everyone, that works with a bunch of the programs in the city and outreaching communities. I did a hand drumming group in the city for and down in the 7th Ward for the Christmas Addicts group. Paid a little bit of money, but it was incredibly rewarding going in and giving basically the talents that I have, and giving them to someone else who's less fortunate. So that was those kind of things. I know Gabe was talking about, playing the gigs that pay $40 and you had to travel. You had 6 flights to get there, and there was no catering, and so you lost $640. But on these kind of things, you have to that reward on a certain level. And I think when you get to level, I think it's really good for us, like we're doing today, to give back a little bit to the community. So recording. Recording is way different now than what it was years ago, right? How many of you have your own little studio set up at home? Yeah, Gabe's got a nice setup.
My dad's working on a studio downstairs. We're gonna put a lot of mics in.
A lot of bikes in it. Yeah, you're getting there.
Stuff for his drums.
Stuff for the drums, right? And that recording, I think, is it's completely different. Like, trying to be in a band and make it in late 90s when I was in school and out of school in DC, to now, it's completely different. I have a hard time talking to my students at Millersville, like, okay, so what do you do now with the record? It's like, I don't know. I guess you tour, because you're not going to make any record. You're not going to sell it. They're not going to the record store buying it, But recording, people still record, and I have a list of clients that I work with, anywhere from a couple people in Nashville, songwriters, to I have a songwriter who lives in Budapest, Hungary. So he'll send me demos, and we'll clean them up, and we'll lay down bass and drums and guitars and send them back, and we go back and forth with things, and it's he has Venmo and so do I. And we get paid, so it's that kind of stuff. So recording, like I said, retail, working here, it was a great experience that I had, and the other experience I had in retail. I learned so much in those retail experiences that the classes in college were supposed to teach me about those things. They don't, and that really helped me with my knowledge of being a musician and trying to make a career of this. Pro Audio, we're right down the street from Tate Towers and Clare Brothers. Are you guys familiar with that? Tate Towers, Clare Brothers, all that stuff up there, Rock Lidditz. They're hiring all the time. The industry now, and that part of the industry is ridiculous. You can ask Ed, like, everybody's touring, right? Everybody's out doing stuff, and they're hiring left and right. I've had kids at Millersville, as soon as they graduate, get hired up there. I have a kid he's out with Chicago. I think he's doing, I can't remember if he's doing monitors or what he's doing out there, but he's out with Chicago working. I have a former student who's at AMT. He's the monitor guy, Gordon, still there. And he was a student of mine like 20-some years ago. So there's that. Repair industry. We don't think about some of the people who repair the instruments. Then we think about maybe that more like guitar guys. Drum guys, we can kind of fix ourselves. But if you want to start making, I would say, repair and manufacturing. There's so many boutique drum companies now. I kind of equate it to kind of like beers, right? There's all these craft beers. Everybody's coming out with this, and this, but there's still like Miller Lite and Coors and Yingling, right? So we still have like Ludwig, Pearl, and Yama, but there's a lot of these other ones that, why not that little niche? My go-to snare drum is a snare drum that was made in Anvil. I think it was made in Anvil, right? It's basically a Black Beauty, but locally made from a local drum maker, and it sounds amazing. And it was half the price of a Black Beauty. So things like that. Again, management, recording, right? If you're into like law things, there's avenues for that. Songwriting, right? That's where you can make a little bit more money. Maybe if you get something that gets picked up. I've had some songwriting credits on songs, and I get, I haven't got to check on a couple of years, but I remember getting one for like $6 because Joan of Arcadia episode played in Australia twice, and I was one of 5 songwriters on a song, so I got a $6 check. Yeah, that kind of thing. Hey, everything goes in there. We're doing okay. So, any questions, comments, anything? I just jotted random things down this morning to talk about. Okay? Yeah.
Well, about that, like, fixing stuff you were talking
Mm-hmm.
about, a drummer, like, if it's just a small thing like tuning, you can do that. But if it's like a big fix, you need like someone to fix it. What if it's like a big fix and you're without your drums for like?
Well, big fix. Well, if you're without your drums, if you're playing, you're probably gonna have extras. You're gonna have some backup gear, right?
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, there is a guy, and this is not on the rock or the drum set kind of level, but where's what's his name's dad live down in Reamer's dad, down in Blue Ball. Andy Reamer, he's the percussionist for the Pittsburgh Symphony for years. His father lives in Lancaster County and makes concert bass drums and rope drums for groups all over the world. Like, he is the guy. And if you order like a concert bass drum, it might be like a 5 to 6 year wait till he makes it. So it's crazy. So there's a guy like that who's made his whole. I mean, he's a woodworker that ended up going into the music industry, that way. And he makes like incredible snare drum sticks too. So, but they're like really expensive. Anyway, they're not a brick for $100. Is that what they are now? $100 a brick? About that? Prices are going up. Inflation. Come on, here we go. All right. So I wrote down some necessities that I think that were just. I tried to listen to 3, but I think I'm at 10. Don't be a jerk was up there in the top 5. All right, just be a good person, right? Give positive vibes, and good stuff will happen. It really does. I can really say that from a teacher standpoint, from a performer standpoint, from someone who's worked and had to hire people, from staffs, from like marching band, for example. Like, positive vibes go a long way. Okay. Know your theory. Okay. Know the language of music. Okay. There are a lot of guitar players who don't, and there are a lot of bass players who don't. Most keyboard players are pretty good. Singers, forget about it. But you have to be the translator in the band. All right. I can't tell you how many times, starting in high school to even, when was that rehearsal? Last Sunday at a rehearsal, working with a guitar player I've worked with for years. He's like, no, man, it's 4 times through that. And I'm like, you don't mean 4 times. You mean 4 times through this, which actually means this many bars. He says, it's 4 bars. And I'm like, it's actually 16 bars, right? You have to translate their language into music language, okay? And I see a banjo on the wall. That's even worse. But a lot, you have to be able to sit there and say, hey, when someone says this, and you really know they mean this, okay, and be able and I think that's so important. I think that's really the reason I got a lot of work, is because I never argued with people. I could sit there and bicker and say, oh, you actually mean 16 bars, not this. And then we get into this, and then the guitar player looks at you like, who are you, a drummer who knows theory? And then it's like, whatever. Instead of yeah, I got you, I know what you mean, and then you just play it. And the song gets better, and the band gets better, and you move on, right? Okay, so knowing theory is super important. And then, translating the guitar player speak into what, real music is. On the top of that, knowing your rudiments, okay? I was a huge fan of drum corps. This weekend's the big drum corps championships out in Indianapolis. I have friends involved in the activity still. It's where I got my hands. It's where I still go back to those warm-ups from 87. And that's what I use in the pad every time before I play, right? So go back to those things, know them, and then apply them. Apply them to however you need them to do them. Good time. I initially started off with 2 things. It was don't be a jerk, good time, right? And have the right sounds. Okay, those are kind of my 3 big ones. Good time's important in anything you do, right? Playing drum set, you gotta have good time. Playing orchestra, you gotta have good time. Playing in a hand drum group, you gotta have good time. So if you're not playing or practicing with your Met, like Gabe said, and there's different levels with Gabe said. I think our younger players, we had the Met on, and it's like to the 32nd note subdivision to make sure that we're 100% perfect, right? As we get older, that metronome's set at like 40. Click. Click. Right? And then it's up to you to understand the time in between that space. Okay? Hi, how you doing?
Doing okay.
Yeah? You having a good day today?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Just here to buy it.
Was it a good show?
I assume it is.
Yeah, what's your name?
Isaac.
Isaac, I'm Paul. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, do you play drums?
As of tomorrow.
You starting?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Sorry to interrupt your show.
That's good. It's not really a show.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, welcome to the club. Like, if you go in the back room, there's a laminating machine to get your membership card. He's not even listening. All right. I think Gabe said this: be professional, be punctual. Right. I mean, get used to it. You have the most gear. You're gonna be the first one there. You're gonna be the last one to leave until you can hire a roadie. Okay. That's the way it's gonna be. And man, it was awesome those couple of years I had a roadie. Right? But yeah, it's be punctual, right? I work with a guy who's, gosh, how old is Bob now? I think he's in his 70s, and he still plays a lot of percussion in the area. And if the call is like 7 o'clock, he'll be there at 5. And I mean, that's ridiculous. That's way too early. But he'll be there at 5, right? And I'll roll in at like 5:15. I'm like, Bob's here already? I'm like, geez. Okay. But he's always ready to go. Okay. Like I said, use the community and reach out, right? Like everyone in this room who has been playing. Jamie, are you retired now? Is that official? Is that the word? Officially. So this is the retirement tour. That guy right there has like boatloads of knowledge, right? And you should talk to him, right? And I forgot Pfeiffer. But if you have something to do for the next 3 days, then maybe you want to save John the next week. No, but really, the community. I look at some of the professional organizations. There's a thing called the Percussive Arts Society, and I highly recommend you get involved with it. There are yearly dues, and you get magazines, newsletters. But if you get a chance to go to the conference, it's called PASIC, the Percussive Arts Society International Convention. It's like how I'm hoping heaven is. Like, I really hope when I die, and if I make it through purgatory, that's what heaven's like. Because it's like everything under the world for percussionists over like 4 days. It's the best people in the world are there, and everyone is a normal person, right? I'll never forget seeing Horatio Hernandez. I think it was at PASIC in 95 or 6. He just defected from Cuba, just came as one of his first performances in America. And there was a big buzz about it. So Peter Erskine sits right next to me. And I'm like, holy cow, Peter Erskine. Everybody know who he is? Yeah, right? Pretty great player. And but that's the kind of thing. And then Horatio started playing, and Peter was like, holy shit, sorry. This is amazing. This guy's from another planet. And I could sit there and talk to Peter Erskine. I'm a huge Wilco fan, the band Wilco. I had a piece of pizza and a Coke with Glenn Cochie a couple years ago at the convention. Right? Everyone is super approachable. Greg Bissonette. This is a story of when I was in college. Greg Bissonette, who at that time was playing with David Lee Roth back in the early 90s, but he's now playing with Ringo Starr. He's the drummer. He's the drummer for the drummer of the Beatles. I mean, it's a pretty big gig, right? I was at the Zildjian booth hitting cymbals. And here's this guy over my shoulder going, hey, that sounds really good. And I'm like, yeah, it does. And I'm like 19. And he goes, you help me pick out some other cymbals for my clinic. And I turn around, it's Greg Bissonette. And I'm like, this is pretty cool. So I helped Greg Bissonette pick out cymbals. He was just a normal dude. Okay? So unlike some other instruments, like I think if you went to the violin convention, if there is one, they're probably poisoning each other to see who can be the best, so competitive. But it's really like I've always found this community, to be welcoming and nothing but helpful, right? No one's going to give you bad advice to make you. No one wants to see you fail. I would I think I can honestly say that. No one wants to see someone like crash and burn at a gig. So use that community as you guys are growing up. I know Connor did. Connor was one of my students for a couple of years, and then you started studying with John, right?
Aaron Walker.
Oh, Aaron, right? Well, I studied with Aaron. I would have come home from college, take a lesson, for a couple months over the summer with Aaron Walker. Why? Well, why not? Can learn something else. So that whole idea, I know I'm an educator, mainly that's what pays my bills and my mortgage, but it's always be a student. Always be a student. Always learn something you don't know how to do. One of the things I always say to my students is like, I want to make you uncomfortable, which this day and age in education you probably shouldn't say, but they get it. And I always try to make them do something musically they don't feel comfortable doing because it makes them better, right? It opens them up to something new they haven't tried, right? So I think that's key. I was in a Scottish bagpipe band for 2 years, playing Scottish bagpipe drums. Why? I didn't know anything about it, right? And it was pretty cool for 2 years. And I learned how to drink scotch. Still don't really care for it. But yeah, and then doing new avant-garde music, or I'm not a jazz guy, but like I've taken jazz gigs, because I know it's going to push me to be better, that kind of stuff. So just the kind of things, just, it's doable, right? There's so many opportunities out there in different ways to make the cash to do what you want to do, right? To play music, to be in music, you can make the money, right? It's just a matter, it's a business, and you have to think that too. That's the one thing. I know Gabe was really talking about that whole, on your handout, nice full color Air Force handout. We don't have it at our little Catholic school. So, what was I going to say? It was about gigging and... I was a business, yeah. That's the one thing I wish I would have done better at the beginning of that. Like 100%, I wish I would have had a financial advisor, someone right at the beginning saying, instead of me going, okay, this money from this gig will make it to this gas station to buy this lottery ticket, and God, I hope I win $10. Right? Like that's a true story. I've been there twice where using the last money I have to buy a scratch off to hopefully get 10 more bucks instead of the $1 I have. Right? So,
That's okay.
Yeah.
We all made that mistake.
Yeah. You live in.
Not anything that not any of us went through when we were young.
No,
it wasn't really a mistake. It was just.
You're figuring it out.
Yeah, you got to figure it out.
Yeah, you figure it out. So.
Don't punish yourself for that one, Carl.
No, I'll punish myself for other ones, not that one. I'll punish myself for that military gig I didn't go for. So if you think about those military gigs, it's pretty sweet. My roommate from college just retired at 47, I think. Yeah. And he could have retired, I think, 10 years ago. But he stayed in for another 10 years.
So he retired?
Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember, I was like,
Yeah.
where is that guy?
Yeah, because I asked Matt. Matt was like, yeah, he's done. He rolled. Like, we don't see him anymore. Then I texted him, I'm like, how's retirement? And he just wrote $signs. So military $signs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, you got 10 minutes for Q&A.
10 minutes,
Anyone have any
right.
questions?